Hello everyone, welcome back to Maximum Attack Rally. I say welcome back, you may never have watched one of these videos before, and if you haven't, welcome as a person not coming back. Anyway, let's talk about the world of rallying and motorsport and everything. There's a few little snippets going on right now, isn't there? Little stories. One thing that has come out this week is that Tom Ingram will be back in WRC3. I say back in WRC3, back in a rally car really. Former ERC champion. I'm really pleased to see that he is back competing, getting out there, and hopefully will be in a position to put together a longer term venture. He, like so many others, has struggled to find the budget to compete. It's the age-old problem, isn't it? If you want to compete at that level, you've got a real struggle on your hands. So it's great to see him back out. I think it illustrates perhaps that the UK needs to focus a little bit more on supporting up-and-coming drivers. If you look across the channel to France, which has had a 9-time world champion and a 7-time world champion, that doesn't happen by coincidence, does it? Incidentally, as I'm recording this, I just saw a notification saying that sprint races are going to occur in Formula 1 this season. Don't know how I feel about that. Feels a bit weird to me having 2 Formula 1 races in one weekend. I don't think I can get on board with that idea. This is a real tangent, isn't it? I used to really like that when I used to watch the British Touring Car Championship. They used to do sprint race and feature race, it was called, wasn't it, where you had to do a pit stop in the Super Touring era, and I really enjoyed that. Having 2 Formula 1 races in one weekend, to me, nah, not into that. Anyway, sorry, a bit of a tangent, wasn't it? Yes, so, getting back to it, I'm really pleased to see Ingram back. I think it is unfortunately a little bit of an indictment against the UK rallying system, for want of a better word, because, like I say, look to France. The fact that Loeb and OJ have won so many titles is not an accident. They are much better at supporting young driving talent than the British are. That's a bit of an issue. It does, however, leave me a very handy segue into the next topic, which is the new association that's been formed partly by Matt Edwards and Rich Milner. Matt Edwards is multiple British rally champion. Rich Milner is M Sport team principal. I'm really happy to see that. I think it's really good to see some high-profile people standing up and being counted after we lost the UK round of the World Championship, and the British Championship is in not a very good place, and just British rallying for me is in a bit of a rut. I know a lot of people won't agree with me on that, and it causes a lot of controversy, but it is, in my view, and we really need to start looking a little bit further ahead as to how we're going to adapt to a very quickly changing world. There are a lot of events out there and a lot of nations out there that have the wherewithal and the finances to put on the WRC round, and I think we've probably taken our position on the calendar for granted a little bit. I think we have taken the stature of rallying in the UK for granted a lot over the last 20 years and not really done enough to maintain it and grow it. So I'm pleased to see that, and I'm pleased to see that there's some other people on board with it. So I'd urge you to take a look at that. I think that's something to watch. I don't want to bash Motorsport UK too much because I don't think that adds anything to the debate, and this association isn't designed to do that. But I think Matt Edwards was right in some of his comments that we don't see enough communication. We don't see enough of a plan, a strategy of what's happening in the future, what they're trying to achieve and how they're trying to achieve it. So I think that's good news. It's good that these people are standing up and saying, you know, we need to do things. Because me, you know, not having such a high profile, but spending a lot of time talking to rally people, the amount of individuals out there, and it is a lot of people, you know, it is a good percentage of the rallying community, are very against changing anything. They don't want to incorporate electric and hybrid cars. They don't want event formats to even think about changing from how they were 50 years ago. They don't want the British Championship to embrace change. They don't well, in the reality is they don't want anything other than rallying to look like it looked in the late 1970s when escorts were winning everything, and Roger Clark, Tony Pond, and all those characters were out there, and that was a great time. I'm not trying to bash that time at all, but we can't pretend we're in the 1970s indefinitely, and we have to look forward. We have to start recognising that the world is changing. There are some very good people, thankfully, involved in this sport. Jamie Edwards, Bryn Pearce, people like that who recognise the need to change. But there are too many who do not, and there are a lot of people that I have had run-ins with and heated discussions with because they do not think that there is anything wrong, even though licence numbers keep going down. And the average age of a rally car is probably 40 years old, and nothing has changed. We're not doing anything to embrace new technology. We're getting left miles behind by social media and other types of cars. If you look at some of the characters out there in the automotive world, your Shmee 150s and people who are garnering huge amounts of attention and making quite handsome livings from cars, you have to wonder what on earth rallying is doing to not be taking advantage of that. So that for me is a really big issue. Also on that note, and I'm going to move on in a second, when one of the presenters of the biggest motoring show in the world, Chris Harris, is a rally fan, and they have put rallying onto Top Gear, you do have to wonder why that link hasn't been made. Why isn't Chris Harris in the British Championship? Why isn't Chris Harris doing Rally GB? He did it 15 years ago in a Fiesta. Why isn't he doing it in an R5 car? Why isn't he doing rallies in R5 cars? I know a lot of people would moan at Motorsport UK funding something like that, and a licence payers' money being used to fund things like that. But if you want to grow the sport, you have to spend some money, you have to put some effort in, you have to have a proper social media presence. You have to take advantage of celebrities like Chris Harris or Ken Block, Kimi Räikkönen, and all Valtteri Bottas, all the other big motoring names that have had a toe in the water of rallying. Anyway, let's leave that behind. I want to talk about the other big thing that's been going on, not strictly rallying, but kind of. It was Extreme E, which we had, was it last weekend? I lose track, I don't know what day it is anymore. It was an interesting one, wasn't it? It was different. I didn't watch all of it. I watched as much as I could. I think there's a few things to touch on. I think really the big one for me was the format isn't quite right, is it? It's just not quite right yet. They haven't nailed it. The location really didn't help. As spectacular as it was, I am in Saudi Arabia as I record this video, and Saudi Arabia is an amazing country. Ignore all the political chit-chat and people sitting on moral high horses in glass houses throwing stones, usually, as many folk in the West are, given our record internationally. Let's not get into politics. Let's leave that behind. It is a fascinating country full of very friendly people, and the setting for the race was incredible because there aren't many beautiful parts of this country. The problem was when you do a race like that with that type of vehicle in sand, you're going to get dust. And what we saw was that dust basically ruining the races. So when you had more than one car on track at any time, they couldn't see. You can't overtake someone when you can't see their car. You know, you see it in Formula One, don't you? When it's raining, it becomes virtually impossible. And racing in those cars in that environment made it even worse. So I think that's a really big issue. Whether you move to a time trial format, as some have suggested, I'm not sure I would do that, because one of the things I actually like about Extreme E is that it's kind of got that rallycross format, which should make it exciting. Hopefully the other venues will allow for that. I think for me though, I would be looking at being very conscious of the surface that you're on. B, I would maybe consider having more cars on track. I know that sounds counterintuitive when you talk about not being able to see, but I would maybe combine that with the track actually being a little bit shorter. Did it need to be 8 kilometres or whatever it was? I think it probably could have been a little bit shorter, so that someone on Dirtfish said it, I can't remember who it was, half the length of the track, double the number of laps. That might help the format a little bit if you had 5 or 6 cars instead of just 3. It might mix it up a little bit. Do you need the semi-final, the semi-final, final, and everything? I don't know. I think they need to work on that a little bit. Obviously, the cars need working on. They didn't have a lot of testing because of COVID, so they were having to pull the power back. So they were 200 horsepower, roughly down on what they should have been, which is a shame. But it is what it is, isn't it? Hopefully, they'll get on top of that in the same way that they got on top of the problems they had with Formula E cars initially. Overall, though, I thought it showed promise, and of all the electric motorsport I've seen, not that there's that much of it, I think it does have the most potential. I think one thing I'm finding tiresome with it is that a lot of the criticism is coming from motorsport's many Luddites that I've already talked about in this video, who are absolutely against anything electric. So even if it was the best thing in the world, they still would have criticised it just because it's electric. I'm not a worshipper of electric cars. I am not someone who's going to kiss Elon Musk's shoes. Don't mistake me for an EV evangelical. I am not that. But I do think we have to recognise that the direction of travel, and we have to be open-minded to this technology, because it isn't going anywhere. Even with Porsche's announcement of big investment in synthetic fuels, electric cars aren't going anywhere. And for me, while I always hope to be able to access an internal combustion engined competition car, electric motorsport is better than no motorsport, and I think we have to remember that. There is debate surrounding greenwashing, whatever that means, and all this stuff, but I think you have to look at the bigger picture in that I just said that electric motorsport is better than no motorsport, and I'm about to say that doing something is better than doing nothing. I'm full of weird expressions today, but that is the case. I think while Extreme E is not perfect, yes, the boat runs on fossil fuels, yes, travelling around the world isn't the best idea, yes, a lot of the vehicles here in Saudi Arabia that were supporting the event were big petrol-powered SUVs, because petrol here is really cheap, and that's what people drive. Those things are bad, but you have to look at the bigger picture. Motorsport, if it wants to survive, has to accept the situation, it has to engage with the situation, and it has to be part of the solution. We can't, as I said earlier, put our heads in the sand and ignore the world around us. We can't pretend that it's 1978 and that the Escort's the best car in the world and that we can do what we want and run rallies, with 500-kilometre days where the drivers are exhausted. We can't do that anymore. We have to look at the future. We have to engage with the debate. We have to show that we can be responsible, doing all these odd little jobs, picking up litter. It may seem a bit silly and a bit virtue signalling, but firstly, if you come to this country, litter is a bit of a problem, unfortunately, so I think doing that is probably relevant to where they held the race. And we just have to wake up. We just have to accept that the world is changing. The world is turning against the internal combustion engine and against the car. If we can say we accept that we need to do more and start to do more and show people that we're willing to listen, we're willing to engage with the debate and clean up our act, we'll be able to compete for an awful lot longer. So you can sit in your house moaning about the cars not having V8s, about World Rally cars being hybrid, about Formula E, about Teslas, about any of that rubbish, but ultimately it's here and it's not going anywhere. So for me, wasn't perfect. There's a lot they can improve, but just give it a chance and let's see what happens with it. It might not be as bad as we think. So that's that. That's this week's video. I'm going to stop there because you don't want to listen to me ranting about politics and all that rubbish. So thanks for watching. Like I said at the start, if this is your first video, I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe if you're on YouTube, like, follow, whatever people do on Instagram. And I hope very much you'll be able to join me again next time. Thanks for watching.